What's up, Motocross Action? I'm Josh Mosman, and welcome to MXA's 2021 450 Shootout. You might be asking yourselves, what took MXA so long to get to this point? Well, we didn't feel like it was right to offer a shootout with only 5 bikes, missing out on 2 major motorcycle manufacturers. Now that we have the Suzuki and GasGas models in our possession, and we spent countless hours of riding and racing on these 450 models, we're excited to offer you MXA's 2021 450 Shootout. Motocross Action has been doing shootouts now for 5 decades, and the knowledge we have today wasn't learned overnight, but it's been passed down from each generation of testers. In MXA's 2021 450 Shootout, we have all 7 450 motocross bikes, and in this video, we're going to break down the pros and cons of each bike, explaining why they should win and why they should lose. And then we'll give you the selected winners of MXA's 450 Motocross Bike of the Year, the best working class bike, the best bargain bike, the best vet bike, and the best pro bike. As always, we began our testing with the stock tire models and sizes that came on each bike, as well as the stock grips. Then, for final shootout testing, we put on ODI's MIG Pro V2 lock-on grips to keep things feeling the same across the board, and we installed fresh Maxxis Max Cross MXST tires to each bike. Without further ado, here's all 7 of the 2021 450 motocross contenders in alphabetical order. The 2021 GasGas MC450F. Why should this bike win the shootout? Retailing for $9,399, GasGas is a motocross hot rod. It is the base model of the KTM 450 SXF. It sells for the same price as the Kawasaki and Yamaha, and it's actually $800 less than a KTM 450. But don't think of the MC450F as an entry-level motocross bike. You might not get KTM's map switch, free flow muffler, hour meter, billet triple clamps, or vented airbox cover, but you do get a Brembo hydraulic clutch, steel clutch basket, Pankel transmission, 270mm front brake rotor from Brembo, braided steel brake hoses, 222-pound weight, chromoly steel frame, and KTM's industry-leading engine technology. In essence, the 2021 GasGas is a sleeper, which means that under the hood are all of the serious Austrian pluses. One caveat, it isn't in competition with the KTM and Husqvarna. It's built to steal customers away from the Big Four with a price that matches them dollar for dollar. Why should it lose this shootout? Because KTM's management did not want the GasGas MC450F to beat the KTM or Husky. How do we know? Because they detuned the power plant in 3 ways. First, the airbox is almost completely closed off and they do not offer a vented airbox cover. Second, the muffler has the infamous ice cream cone shaped restrictors in it. These enduro focused restrictors don't come on KTM and Husky, and they hurt the throttle response and lessen over rev. Number 3, the ECU has 2 maps, launch control and traction control wired into it, but the MC450F doesn't have a map switch to access anything more than map 1. Plus, the 42 Nm shock spring is too soft for riders over 180 pounds, unlike KTM and Husqvarna's 45 spring. Next up, the all-new 2021 Honda CRF450. Why should this bike win the shootout? For $9,599, Honda threw everything about the 2020 CRF450 out and started over. The 2021 CRF450 has a single-sided exhaust, center port cylinder head, upside-down air filter, 8-plate clutch, and narrower plastic bodywork. The layout of the seat, bars, and pegs is the best in class, and the dry weight was reduced by 5 pounds down to 233 total. The frame is 20% less rigid laterally, and best of all, Honda stepped away from the last 2 years of overly aggressive 60 horsepower bands for broader and mellower power, and the power is spread out much more effectively. The new Honda engine alone is worth the price of admission. So why should this bike lose the Shootout? The power band may be a big improvement, but there are 8 flaws on the 2021 CRF450. First, because of a virtually untested ECU, the mapping can be ratty at low RPM. 2, the forks are too soft and lack adequate damping on compression. 3, the shock is sprung for a 150-pound rider, but most 450 guys are in the 180-pound range. Number 4, it overheats in long, hard motos and sometimes on the starting line too. Number 5, it has 11 different maps, launch control, and traction control options that make you dizzy trying to remember them. 6, the handling is very Honda-like, meaning that it head shakes at speed and turns in great, but oversteers on corner exit. 7, finding the proper fore-aft balance on the 2021 CRF450 is a full-time job. And 8, Honda has a bad track record with first-year models, and we don't think the R&D on the 2021 model was finished before they pushed it out the door. Next up, the 2021 Husqvarna FC450. Why should this bike win the Shootout? Well, for $10,299, the Husqvarna deserves kudos for 3 award-winning changes. First, motocross bikes are too tall and get taller every year. For 2021, Husqvarna stopped the insanity by lowering the chassis by almost an inch. The reward was a true-to-life lower center of gravity, and the result was incredible smooth handling. Second, tired of the bad rap against air forks, Husky implemented massive internal modifications to the 2021 exact forks that make the stroke much more fluid, the reduced pressure spikes, bled off excess oil pressure, and reduced the effects of an air fork's hyper-progressive spring rate at the end of the stroke. Third, the power delivery on the 2021 FC450 is a no-drama mama. Husky's engineers were able to build a kinder, gentler power band that was so well modulated there are no burps, surges, or abrupt hits anywhere on the curve. Best of all, they didn't give up anything on peak horsepower to make it happen. This bike still ranks second in most peak horsepower. When you combine these 3 big pluses with its amazing clutch, brake, 224-pound weight, Pankel transmission, optional throttle cams, no tools airbox, and braided steel brake hoses, you have an unbeatable combination. So why should the Husky FC450 lose this Shootout? Well, apart from the run-of-the-mill gripes about tightening the spokes, checking the bolts, and venting the airbox, there's little to complain about on the 2021 Husky and a lot to crow about, not the least of which is that our feet could touch the ground. It goes fast without any drama, and he turns better than any bike on the track. Up next, the 2021 Kawasaki KX450. Why should this bike win the Shootout? At $9,399, the KX450 is the most pleasant of the 4 Japanese machines. The power delivery is brisk, clean, and quick revving. Even though it ranks 6th out of 7 on peak horsepower, the 2021 KX450 has a very lively feel. The chassis delivers a light touch at turn-in and is stable in a straight line. A new, upsized Belleville washer clutch and a switch to oversized fat bars solve 2 of the most common complaints about late model KX450s. It is also the second lightest Japanese-made 450 at 234 pounds, which is 4 pounds lighter than the Yamaha YZ450F and Honda CRF450, but it is 11 pounds heavier than the KTM 450. It is a nice, enjoyable, and fun bike to race, but maybe Kawasaki should start thinking about a few of the obvious flaws. Why should it lose this Shootout? The MXA test riders like racing the KX450, but we had to chase issues every race. Here's a quick list of why it shouldn't win. First, this is the same Kawasaki KX450 from 2019, save for the new clutch and handlebars. It wasn't winning shootouts in 2019 or 20, and the bars and clutch basket don't change its ranking. The brake pedal can be adjusted up, but not down. The fork springs are either too soft or the rear suspension is too stiff, one or the other. It's not the slowest 450 on the track, but it is the second slowest. The jumbo-sized 250mm rear rotor is overly touchy, the engine overheated easily, the fork guards, front number plate, and radiator shrouds cracked. The airbox cover requires 2 different size wrenches to get into it. The chain roller and guide wears out fast. The clutch and brake levers feel like they came off different bikes, and the green plastic loses its shine on day one. Next up, the 2021 KTM 450 SXF. Why should this bike win the shootout? With a retail price of $10,199, the 2021 KTM 450 SXF is the standard by which the other 6 bikes measure themselves. It has won 8 MXA 450 shootouts in the last 10 years. How has it achieved such a glorious record? Easily. It is the most technologically advanced motocross bike ever made. Need proof? KTM pioneered the modern trend of broad, linear power bands that we see the rest of the manufacturers going to now. It has the strongest brakes, the most robust hydraulic clutch with a CNC machined steel basket, and best shifting. KTM's chromoly steel frame delivers a forgiving and agile feel compared to the Big Four's rigid aluminum frames. The air filter requires no tools. It has an optional quick turn throttle cam, braided steel clutch and brake hoses, and quick release fuel lines. It is 10 pounds lighter than the lightest Japanese 450, and every MXA test rider loved the new WP air forks. Why should it lose this shootout? 2 reasons. 1, previous iterations of the controversial WP air fork hurt its reputation, and it's going to take some time for the vastly improved 2021 forks to overcome public perception. 2, the KTM faces tough competition, not from Japan, but from its brothers in arms, Husky and GasGas. It still maintains superiority over the white and red Austrian mounts in power delivery, snappy throttle response, and acceleration, but the restraints in corporate platform sharing mean that it has to hand over all of its technological advances to its stablemates. When advancing the breed, it is an all-Austrian show because the YZ450F is unchanged for 2020, the RMZ 450 is unchanged from 2018, the KX450 is barely changed from 2019, and the CRF 450 is not ready for the prime time yet. Next up, the 2021 Suzuki RMZ 450. Why should this bike win the shootout? First and foremost, the 2020 RMZ 450 isn't going to win any shootouts, but that doesn't disqualify it as a viable race bike for riders that suit it. At just $8,499, the existing RMZ 450's power is in the perfect place to get the job done for the average racer. The power profile feels a bell-shaped curve, it starts soft on bottom, builds quickly to its 8,800 RPM peak, and then falls off quickly. There's no reason to rev the engine out. It'll just go slower after 8,800. The power is at its best from 5,000 RPM to its 54 horsepower peak. The RMZ 450 isn't about speed, it's about agility. The handling is focused on tight turns, short straights, and supercross style jumps. Instead of a new frame and suspension back in 2018, MXA wishes that Suzuki had kept the old frame and suspension and just put a new engine in it. Why should this bike lose the shootout? The 2020 RMZ 450 is a 4-year-old design and it's built around a new chassis with an old engine. The chassis is out of balance, the stink bug layout transfers too much weight to the front wheel which creates oversteer. An oversteer wasn't a problem on the old frame, but the new aluminum frame is too stiff, too tall, and too steep. We do, however, think the 2021 Suzuki forks are better than the same units that are found on the Honda and Kawasaki 450s. Unfortunately, they can't do their best work in conjunction with the Showa BFRC rear shock. Also, we have to mention that the 2021 Suzuki RMZ 450 weighs 241 pounds without gas. With Suzuki's permission, MXA used the 2020 RMZ 450 to get a head start on our testing before we waited for our 2021 RMZ 450 to arrive, since both bikes are exactly the same. Next up, the 2021 Yamaha YZ450F. Why should this bike win the shootout? Yamaha's power band strategy was the road less taken by other brands. For $9,399, the YZ450F's power hits hard momentarily off idle and then goes soft in the low to mid transition. How soft? It makes almost 4 horses less than the CRF 450 at 7,000 RPM, but from 9,000 RPM on up, it builds big power. It peaks at 58.56 horsepower, the most in the 450 class. The muted low to mid power, followed by a very late romping and stomping horsepower on top, is quite unique. The engine is especially good on fast straights and long starts. We credit the engine's soft bottom, expanding mid-range, and ultra-strong top end for why the YZ450F handles so much better now. The best things about the 2021 YZ450F are its Kawasaki SSS suspension, incredible dependability, and a smooth 58.56 horsepower engine that peaks at a very high 9,700 RPM. So why should this bike lose the Shootout? We love the suspension and admire the top-end powerability and bless the reliability of the YZ450, but we can't help but wonder how great it would be if it weren't so big, bulky, wide, tall, loud, and heavy. The ergonomics are quite an acquired taste, not helped by a seat that feels like you're sitting in a bucket. Without a doubt, the YZ450F has the worst airbox and filter combination on the track, and it is an unfortunate byproduct of Yamaha's 11-year-old backwards engine concept. The combination of the exhaust pipe wrapping around almost 360 degrees around the cylinder and the forward-mounted airbox makes the YZ450F assault your hearing. This is not a new bike. The 2021 YZ450F is an unchanged version of the 2020 bike. Alright, now let's get into the rankings. MXA's best bargain 450 of 2021 is the Suzuki RMZ 450. We're not going to sugarcoat the Suzuki. It isn't the best bike in any other category other than the bargain basket. It's not fast, but it is pleasant. It's not well suspended, it has a weak clutch, a dry weight that sends the needle off the scale, average brakes, doesn't have electric starting, and has a low resale value. If you buy a 2021 RMZ 450, don't spend any money on aftermarket parts, exhaust pipes, or factory bling. Get the suspension dialed in and leave everything else alone. It's a good bike for the price, but not a penny more. Believe it or not, most MXA test riders like the Suzuki RMZ 450 power band because when short shifted, kept in the meat of the power, and used properly, it has a very effective power delivery. For anyone on a budget or looking to get into the sport without spending $10,000 on a race bike, the RMZ 450 is custom made for you. Next up, the best vet class 450 of 2021. For this one, we have to go with the KTM Gas Gas and Husky. MXA set up a special test for vet racers only. We had 7 test riders from 30 to 65 years old race all 7 2021 450 motocross bikes over a 2-month period. Once they had raced all of them, we had asked each of them to choose the best vet bike, and they picked all 3. That might sound like 1 or 2 of them chose the KTM, a couple chose the GasGas, and a handful chose the Husqvarna, but in reality, all 7 of them chose a different Austrian bike every time they raced. All 3 Austrian mounts have different personalities, but they offer vastly improved suspension, usable power delivery, weight within a pound or 2 of each other, indestructible clutches, strong brakes, and the best components of any bike in the field. We doubt that there is any tie in the motocross world that can't be broken by one high-end feature, but these 3 bikes are perfect for a vet racer. Which one of them is up to you. Next up, the best Pro Class 450 of 2021. For this category, we chose the 2021 Honda CRF 450. The Honda 450 is perfect for pro racers. Pros don't care about stock suspension because no matter how good it is stock, they're going to revalve it anyways. They don't care about stock mapping because they're going to put a Vortex ignition and twisted development map in it no matter what. Pros also don't care about the exhaust system or horsepower because they're definitely going to send it to their favorite tuner. Plus, pros don't worry about the stock air filter, top end, spring rates, or transmission ratios because they don't work on their bikes anyways. They have mechanics. The best bike for a pro racer is the 2021 CRF 450. Why? It's status back, has a wide range of hop-up tuners dialing it in, can easily crack 60 horsepower with a few mods, and everybody looks good dressed in red, right? Non-pros should wait for the second or third year of production of the all-new Honda CRF450. Why? History proves that Honda will fix most of its first-year blunders in years 2 and 3, and it also proves that pros don't listen to history lessons. So what's the best working class 450 of 2021? You probably guessed this one, the Yamaha YZ450F. If you're looking for a race-ready motocross bike that will still be running 10 years from now, the Yamaha YZ450F is the only choice. Its reliability is legendary, and for MXA's money, Yamaha builds an absolutely bulletproof product. We test all of our new motocross bikes for 1 calendar year by racing them every weekend, and we rarely break anything on the YZ450F. We also never have to adjust the valve train. It's odd that a bike that has the most horsepower would have the longest lifespan, but Yamaha's test department has done its homework. The YZ450 is built like a tank. Unfortunately, it's also big, bulky, and heavy like a tank. Yamaha's KYB SSS suspension is the best on the track, and it has been since 2006. Kudos to Yamaha's in-house test department, who went against corporate wishes to stick with coil spring forks when the red, green, and yellow bikes were wasting time with the Showa SSF TAC forks and Kayaba's PSF2 air forks. That was 4 years lost for Honda, Kawasaki, and Suzuki, but time made up by Yamaha. Yamaha has fought back against its competitors without breaking the bank. Thanks to superiority in suspension and reliability, Yamaha has built more than a competitive machine that will save the budget-conscious working-class stiffs money in the long run. Alright, now let's finish off with the final result we've all been waiting for. MXA's 2021 450 Motocross Bike of the Year is the 2021 Husqvarna FC450. Surprised, aren't you? The only people who aren't surprised are the people who spent time racing the 2021 Husky FC450. This really wasn't a hard choice. It was the only logical winner. First, the 2021 Yamaha YZ450F and Suzuki 450 aren't even warmed over versions of last year's bike. They are in fact last year's bike with new decals. Second, the 2021 Kawasaki is a 3-year-old design whose only change in 3 years was to borrow the clutch design from KTM for 2021. Third, the 2021 Honda CRF450 is quite obviously an unfinished pre-production model that got shoved out the factory door before the R&D department had completed it. Fourth, each of the made in Japan machines has its charms and issues. The RMZ has a low price to go with low horsepower. The KX450 is fun to ride but down on power. The YZ450 is up on power but not very fun to ride. And the Honda 450 will be a great bike soon, just not in its first year of production. Diving into the final three, the MXA Wrecking Crew loved the GasGas MC450F's handling, sleek bodywork, and $800 price reduction, but it was obvious that the Austrian management sabotaged it so that it wouldn't beat the KTM or Husky 450s. Yes, it's easy to turn the GasGas MC450F into a KTM 450 by adding aftermarket parts, but you couldn't do it for $800, which means you might as well have bought a KTM in the first place. Every MXA test rider was adamant that the KTM 450 SXF was faster, more responsive, and harder hitting than its white and red stablemates. Additionally, its forks rode higher in their stroke and the suspension was firmer. There was no doubt that the KTM 450 had the upper hand, especially for faster riders. When push came to shove, MXA seemed deadlocked on the KTM versus Husky 450 for our 2021 Motocross Bike of the Year. So how did the Husky win the Bike of the Year crown? The Husqvarna engineers took big chances that could have came back to bite them. First, they ditched KTM's brisker, harder hitting, and more aggressive power delivery for a kinder and gentler power band that enabled racers to ride harder, get on the gas sooner, and be more aggressive in the tight stuff, and they did it while making the second most horsepower in the class. Second, Husky gambled at lowering the center of gravity by shortening the forks, changing the rising rate of the linkage, and limiting the shock stroke would pay big dividends. Amazingly, the FC450 handles like it has ground effects sucking it to the track. Nothing handles as well as the 2021 Husky FC450, and it proves that making risky calls and chasing improvement is better than being complacent. So that's all for MXA's 2021 450 Motocross Shootout video. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you want more information on these bikes, you can check out the full article in the April issue of Motocross Action Magazine. To get it, you can subscribe online at our website, motocrossactionmag.com, or you can pick it up at your local newsstand, or check it out digitally at mxa-digital.com. Also, check out motocrossactionmag.com for more information on these bikes, more videos, race results, product tests, and more. And click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with our latest videos.